what we've been doing now, which is also interesting in the e-commerce market, is you get a lot of data return. So typically in the retail market, you would sell to wholesalers and you would hope they would give you the feedback of whether the consumers like it. On Amazon and now on e-commerce, we get a lot of that data. And along with that data and all the new tools that we have, our testing tools to be able to poll an audience without actually having to physically bring them to your office and ask them these questions and do this consumer testing. Within 3-4 hours, I can poll 100 people and ask them, does this image send the message I'm expecting it to send?
Welcome to Business Ninjas, brought to you by WriteForMe, where you'll hear from business leaders who are out there growing their business and slaying it every day. Learn from the masters. Let's get started.
Hey everybody, welcome back for another episode of Business Ninjas. I'm here today with Terry Lee. She's the Creative Design Director at Unybrands. Terry, welcome to the show.
Thank you. Nice to be here.
Yeah, excited to have you. So Terry, why don't you start and tell us a little bit about yourself?
Well, my name's Terry, and I am the Creative Design Director, as you said. My background is pretty wide-ranged. I have came to Unybrands from a consulting. I had my own consultancy working with various startups, some bigger companies, a lot of nonprofits, working on everything from, nonprofit fundraiser events, some graphic design and packaging, helping with pop-up store designs. Before then, my background in design, I should say, is in product design. And I started in kitchen consumable products. So Chefin was the primary name brand, and we did a lot of work for Williams-Sonoma and Starbucks. And then I ended up moving into sort of food design, which is a really interesting, unusual niche field that a few of us have moved into, I should say. And it's really about engaging people through food. So similar to what you would do with design, engaging people through a product, but actually through a culinary experience. And so then that moved me into a lot of packaging for food, for products, for store interiors, for branding and identity. And so that's sort of what led me to Unybrands. I don't know if that was a great answer. It feels like that was the intro.
No, that's fantastic. That's great. It sounds like you've had a really interesting journey getting you to Unybrands. Tell me a little bit more about Unybrands and what you do.
Well, Unybrands is a strategic buyer for the e-commerce market today. And we buy successful Amazon and D2C brands and bring them under our own portfolio. So we look at categories within 8 product verticals. Our verticals are personal care, home care, juvenile and baby, supplements, garden and outdoor, sports and fitness, lifestyle, arts and home, and culinary. So looking at that, we have, just around 24 brands. And we work directly with the founders to, give them a strategy, help bring us up to speed, and give them a way to sort of exit their business, but also start us off with a lot of success.
So I imagine, with your background kind of in that creative space has really led you, to be obviously the creative director in the world of, buying e-commerce brands. I imagine that was probably helpful kind of transitioning you to where you are now.
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting because I don't know that I knew this was going to be a good fit for me or that I would be the right person for this. I've worked in so many different industries, right? Like I've been in consumer products. I actually worked in retail interiors and for an interior design firm, an architecture firm. I've done branding, and when they reached out to me at Unybrands, I said, well, it fits. I'm really interested, but do I really know it? Because I'm not an Amazon person. I had never worked on e-commerce. I should say at my age, it wasn't a big thing when I was growing up and when I was learning how to be in design. It was very traditional retail marketing. But in fact, I've really learned that understanding the user experience, even the food design, really seeing how people engage with products and their reactions has given me a lot of insight. And so on my team, I have everything from product development and design to graphics, imagery, copy, and actually consumer insights and category insights. So everything that I say to build the perfect story, both written and visual, to sell and communicate the product value.
Mhm. And why is that branding and design so important for you to help, leverage growth for these companies and these brands?
Well, it's interesting. I think that what we forget is that everybody buys visually. Traditionally, in the retail market, you go and whatever catches your eye. I mean, studies have shown that people take in all information visually, like 90%, even if it's text, right? It's about what pops off the page, what's bold, what's colorful. I mean, we know this in user experience design now with websites. The call to action button is often color coded, it's a little bold, it's positioned in a certain spot. So now when you move to the e-commerce market, I think design is the way to sell a product. It's, I always say it's like building a menu. A menu has to give you the perfect description to make your mouth water, to help you think that, oh, I think I know what it's going to taste like. And then you're hoping that by the time you get it at the table, it's exactly what you expected or even better.
Mhm.
So design is that way to build that digital story and help someone imagine what it feels like to hold, to touch, to use without actually getting to pick it up off the shelves.
Hmm. Do you have an example that maybe you could share with the listeners about, a success story of, how you were able to, whether it be through the design or branding, really leverage that growth?
Yeah, so what we've been doing now, which is also interesting in the e-commerce market, is you get a lot of data return. So typically in the retail market, you would sell to wholesalers and you would hope they would give you the feedback of whether the consumers like it. On Amazon and now on e-commerce, we get a lot of that data. And along with that data and all the new tools that we have, our testing tools to be able to pull an audience without actually having to physically bring them to your office and ask them these questions and do this consumer testing. Within 3-4 hours, I can poll 100 people and ask them, does this image send the message I'm expecting it to send? Then I'll take that feedback, find the best, graphics, visuals, imagery, and I'll put that together on the Amazon listing. And we'll then test it again. We'll measure the conversion or the metrics or the sessions. Are people clicking on that listing? And we've noticed that a lot of times when we've changed the graphics and nothing else on our marketing, we've increased conversion by anywhere from 5 to 8%, which is pretty significant. Sales have gone up. And often, if our main image is really impactful, we'll notice an increase in sessions. So people will all of a sudden notice it and click it first. Some of our sessions have doubled and tripled with just a change of an image, a position, um, a value that we might show. So it really makes you realize the impact of creating visual hierarchy. I'd say that's what the difference is. Either we're changing the size of the words, we're changing the color to help a specific message pop.
And, I'm curious to pick your brain a little bit because I imagine there has to be a line to walk to be able to, leverage this design and growth for the brands that you're working with, but also to kind of staying true to that brand's identity.
Well, so I always say it's twofold, right? So some of our products are actually brands that have a large enough portfolio, a large enough audience that I consider it brand worthy. And then a couple of our brands in our portfolio are really product driven. So we have one or two really strong products that whether people know the name or not, they love that product. And so I think we kind of do a mix of both. You cannot, when you have this many brands, I don't think you can ever put 100% effort in brand building for every single one of them. I think that's part of the strategy, right? Which ones are the most important? Which ones can you leverage to grow? And those are the ones you lean into. On a general level, I think as designers, as creatives, we're always trying to create a cohesive look. It builds expectation. People know where the message is going to be. They know, hey, if I look at that image, I'm going to get the key value, the dimensions, I'm going to see size and scale. All of those are the pieces of the puzzle that you're trying to build for the consumer in a really quick and tangible way that then they don't have to read through all the descriptions, all the bullets, all the details. I don't know if that answered your question.
Yeah. No, absolutely. Yeah, no, that's really interesting. And I'm curious, how do you stay on top of, obviously aside from being a creative, and how do you stay on top of, all of the different trends and, ideas to be able to leverage for these brands? Where does that come from?
Well, I don't know. I guess for me, this is like in my blood. I
Yeah.
joke that, this design for me is a second degree. So I started in philosophy. I thought I was going to be in public policy. My dad's a physician, my mom's a teacher, my sister's an anthropologist. I was like, I'm going to do something more academic. But my whole life I've been creative. I've torn advertisements out of magazines and I used to wallpaper my room. I have collected the stickers on produce, products. I have taken apart products, put them back together, rebuilt products my entire life. Um, but I started in philosophy. I thought I was going to go more into policy, and then my sister kept saying, you really need to be a designer. And she would send me these articles, and she started working uh, in the anthropology field of like human factor studies. So understanding how humans interact with products and where to put buttons for someone who's older. It's the whole idea of universal design that was really founded, I think, in the 70s, 80s, really understanding how people can engage if they're older, if they're arthritic, sort of the emergence of the good grips in the OXO series. So my sister kept saying, I'm doing this work with product designers, and this is like how you think you should look into this. So I went back to school for a degree in product design and realized that I have been researching and looking at this stuff all the time. I mean, even in Unybrands, I've never worked on Amazon products until I came here,
Yeah.
but I have quickly bought into the Amazon platform, as probably the majority of our consumers have. It's easy, it's fast, it has a lot of information. I joke that I do my research on Amazon when I want to understand products. So coming into this industry, a lot of even our brands that we own, I had already looked at because I was interested in those industries. So I think in general, to ask a creative, where do you get your inspiration? A lot of us do this because we're just
Yeah.
like, I'm looking at it in magazines. It's on my social media. It's on my, the top of my feed. But, we have our insights team does a lot more deeper research with more, metric driven to really understand, what are the consumers doing? There are a lot of trend sites that you can look into, and it depends on the product category in terms of where we're going to get that inspiration and where we're going to see, the job of a designer is to not only execute what's current now and what's good, but also try to think one or two, years ahead. What are consumers wanting? What is the new trend? What's coming up, and how can we win on those platforms?
Do you tend to see any challenges when you're talking about integrating creative teams from different brands? Are there any challenges that arise in that you tend to see often?
Well, it's interesting because here I am in the Rochester office, and we're here in Rochester because we acquired one of our pet brands that was based here. And that brand happened to have come with their own creative team. And so that's how we've grown it. And I'm here in Rochester, so we've built a more cohesive team here that are around creative. But it's always been interesting because our founder was very used to working with our creatives directly. We're in the same office together. And, as we always say, old habits die hard. So he would walk out of the office and be like, oh, I need this quick thing. And then we would realize that it was hard because you're trying to integrate a new, I don't know, it's a new culture being in a bigger brand with the individual brands. And I think that that's just true in general of any sort of acquisition or merger or moving hands. So I think that's where I really love having the founders involved, because there's a slow transition. I always say there's a nice synergy where someone's been working on the brand for a while, and then eventually we build trust, you build systems, and then you say, hey, listen, I think I have your vision and we can take it over from here. I mean, one of our designers in the UK came on as she was a consultant for one of our big brands, and is still with us today, but working on a lot of different brands. And we've transferred the brand that she started to another designer. And she's been like, oh my gosh, that's so interesting to see what you would have done with the same content I've been working on. So if it's a really strong designer and they're excited to work on lots of different things, I think that's easy. It might be different for different departments, but in the creative world, the joy of being at a company like Unybrands is that you really can stretch your skills and look at lots of different product industries and try different things. We might try a design and realize that, hey, it doesn't fit this brand, but it's really great for this other brand. And it can really help propel each of our brands in a different way without, only focusing on one direction.
Yeah, and it sounds like, that ability to stretch yourself, to grow within kind of different areas is one of the ways that Unibrands is really able to separate itself from its competition. Are there any other, things that stand out to you of how Unibrands is really able to stand out?
We're an AI tech platform. I think that, we really we do a lot of different things. So I'm going to backtrack just a little bit and
Yeah.
say one of the things that I think is really great about Unibrands is the sort of around the sun system, right? We have teams in China, we have teams in the EU, we have teams in the US. So we can essentially, we're a global company and we can work around the clock and we can learn from each other, cultural nuances, keywords, how we might express different products in different categories. So I think that one of the things is just this idea of being able to work across lots of different cultures and working with AI. So we integrate a lot of our, artificial intelligence. And I know that there's a lot of controversy around, hey, should I embrace it? Should I not? I actually think it's a tool that's up and coming, right? I mean, even when the internet first came, people were like, oh, I shouldn't use it for research. Well, now we're finding it's a great platform. Adobe Illustrator, our primary creative tool, is integrating AI. And while, it's not that we're just taking it, it hyper speeds the work that you're doing. And then now we have the creative eye to nuance it, to add the filters, massage it so that it actually looks like the work we've done. It's exponentially sped up our process, both from copy to imagery to graphics. And I think that's, one of the really interesting, unique characters of Unibrands. We've really embraced technology.
Hmm. When you were talking about these brands, is what would you say the biggest challenge that these brands have before they start working with Unibrands is?
Gosh, that's an interesting question. I wonder, because I really haven't been on that
Yeah.
early side. I mean, we're still small, but I haven't been on those early sides. What I've seen is a lot of our brands that come in use outside agencies for their creatives. And while I think it's a really quick, efficient way when you don't have a team and you can't afford the overhead to get creatives done. And in fact, we have a similar model where I try to work around the clock. So we have offshore talent that will often pass off some of the projects that we're doing so that they can give us a draft when we're on, we can make edits. And then when we go to sleep, they can continue to work. So we're really working over a 24-hour clock. So I think a lot of these small brands also used outside agencies, but not having a single hub internally to really understand your brand voice, your brand messaging, how you want to apply it means every time you work it with an outside agency, you have to recommunicate that and hope that they have the same style. So style and consistency, I've noticed, has been a little bit challenging across some of our brands, not all of them. And then I think also having those assets to be able to figure out, well, what else can we do? So
Mhm.
when you have the raw assets on the creative team, we can splice and use it in so many different assets. We can use it for PPC marketing. We can use it for Google Ads. We can use it on social. But I need that raw data and those raw images so I can start finding other creative ways to use it. So I would imagine that that's, from a creative side, a challenge for some of the smaller emerging brands.
Interesting. That's a really great insight. I really appreciate that. Well, Terry, as we start to wrap up this conversation, is there anything that you want to leave our listeners with, whether it be about Unibrands, about, being a creative, the industry in general, any advice, anything you want to leave our listeners with?
Um, my own little piece will be follow your heart. I think when you're passionate about something, you'll find that you'll succeed and you'll want to work harder. And I always say, at least for me in Unibrands, I always say, look for your hedgehog. What's the one thing you do really well? I started in, I'm really good at, interested in policy. I'm really interested in metrics and math, but yet I'm really color driven, visually driven. I'm a tinkerer. I like to make things. I've, rebuilt parts of my own house. I think finding your passion and figuring out how to lean into it and what you're really good at, and then finding the right strategic partners. I mean, for me, it's been incredible to find a creative team with really tandem skills. So anything that I'm, maybe not 100% the best at, right? They can lean in and support. And together as a team, we really build something strong. And it's not because we all are trying to do the same thing or we all have the same strength. It's really because we can lean on each other. We know how to collaborate. We can pass the baton, knowing that that person and trusting that that person will build upon the inspiration that you've established. And then together we really build something strong. So I think in any industry across all businesses, that's a really important skill, is to understand when to lean in and when to step back.
I think that's terrific. Well, Terry, this has been a very insightful conversation. I appreciate all of your insights, learning more about Unybrands. I think this was amazing, and I really appreciate you being on Business Ninjas today.
Thank you so much for the time. I appreciate it.
Yeah, great to have you.